Good morning, beautiful people of the internet, and welcome back once more to the Sunday Special Live. And we have an award winner with us today at the Inspirational Women's Awards that took place yesterday. Yes, yesterday. No, the
Friday.
day before, Friday.
I'm still
Ah,
recovering.
you can tell how amazing that night was because I don't know what day it is. um, so that was brilliant. Helen, tell us about your award. You won it for efforts of fundraising, right? You did an
Fundraising,
amazing job.
inspirational fundraiser. Yes, bless. I thought I was flying back to present awards. That's all. That's the most I knew about it. And oh my gosh, it was so exciting. I presented an award to Miley in class. She got two actually. Inspirational mother, and I forgot the other one. And then kind of like property like bucket list, I got to present an award to Sarah Beanie, which was super exciting. And she told me, I love your work, which was also the highlight of the night. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't really listening to the guy that introduced my award because I didn't know why. And then they read out my name and I thought, oh my God, I thought they'd done like an Oscars and thought, oh, they've read out the presenter instead of as the winner. I thought they've messed it up. And then I saw my face on the screen. I'm like, oh, okay, this is real. So I was unceremoniously short for words.
Considering
yes.
like Rachel Riley won like 2 awards or 3
Yeah.
awards, I can't remember. Like she's a celebrity and blah blah blah. The biggest round of applause for someone winning an award was Helen Chorley. Like she had 50 people over 3 tables or 4 tables, whatever it was, and
5
everyone just
tables.
went.
Actually, I have to say, as much as chuffed to bits as I am, and I totally am about winning an award because it's such a change for me to get one rather than handing them out. That the sound of that cheer, like honestly, was like something from Wembley. It was amazing. So thank you to everybody that was there. Thank you to everybody that came along and supported and cheered and lost their voice. I'm not sure Jess Macaulay's voice is still recovered. So God bless her. Thank you. Made me feel very loved and very proud and very honoured to be there with 50 amazing men and women from Property Sisters, Women in Construction Awards, the PSA. Yeah, and I loved especially that our tables had men and women on them, which is really important to me, as you know. So, yeah, it's a jolly good night. Not sure how I'm going to fit my luggage, but man, first world problems.
Helen made the mistake of letting me sit next to 2 of her oldest like school friends that she'd known. So I've got all the stories. So if anybody wants blackmail work on Helen, you come and talk to me. There's a premium because
Claire, if you're watching,
it's too late. Claire have spilled all the beans. I've got all the dancing stories. I've got all of the rugby stories. All of the rugby stories, Helen.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh dear. Oh, anyway, I'm moving swiftly on.
So, Adam, what's the special number? Was it 6617? Is that what it landed on?
I think that's where we ended up in the end. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the significance of 6617 is the word count for today's Sunday supplement.
That's correct. I thought you were going to tell us some other interesting facts about 6617. Actually, that would have been good. That would have been good. We could do that.
Next week's lottery numbers.
Just before we dive into to Adam's Sunday supplement, also known to this group, Wendy Whitaker Large also got an Inspirational Woman Award for all the work that she's done with the HMOs and getting the law changed. So that was fabulous recognition. So well done, Wendy.
Nice.
Very much deserved as well.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam. Over to you.
That's right. Don't worry. So we'll have to have that as a feature from now. So tell us something else about 6617. I've just Googled it, and there's a Lego truck rally. That's the best I can do at the moment. So we'll have to do better than that in future. But so we had a pretty good week for property people, I think, to be honest, because we had positive news in terms of the Bank of England committee members not voting up anymore. First meeting without an up vote for, I think it was September 21. the last time there was no upvote. And so that was a big deal. And then we also had gilt yields swap breaks were down about 0.2 for the week. So if we had more weeks like that, we'd be laughing, to be honest with you. We need some more of that. We also had some pretty good numbers that the flash PMIs come out this week of the month, and they came out, and the best real-time indicator for what the economy is doing, and they were still very positive. Services still above 53, which is great news. And consumer confidence was out as well. And although those figures make horrible reading these days, there was, for the first time in a long time, a positive balance on people thinking of their personal finances over the next 12 months. So I guess they're looking forward to pay rises and things like that that are potentially coming next month or whenever. And inflation not being so aggressive, and also energy prices actually coming downwards, which is all great news and all adds up to a nice thing. You know, the inflation numbers were certainly better than I expected, better than most other people expected, down to 3.4 on CPI. I've gone into inflation today in probably more technical detail than I have done for a long, long time, because this is a pretty critical point in this whole cycle. It's been 3 years and 2 months since I started rattling on about inflation and how it was coming. And now there seems to be this, we're under 4% on the headline rate. We're all done here, jolly good. People are getting a bit overconfident, whereas obviously the members of the bank's monetary policy committee are a bit more on it than that. And they know that what's happening at the moment is these big energy price drops that we've seen since these ridiculous peaks that we had in, late 22, early 23, are now dropping out of the figures. And I think I said last week, but it's worth repeating, what happened to the gas price in the UK specifically was the equivalent of oil going to $1,000 a barrel. So if you can get your head around what that would have done at the petrol pumps and things like that, I mean, utter carnage. And that's why we had, it's left scars on people not putting their heating on over winter and all sorts of issues that it's created. But finally, the average consumer is at least a little bit bullish about their personal finances. Now, the problem is this disinflation in energy, these prices coming down, is obviously dragging down CPI, right? When it stops going down, which is pretty much reached nearly the bottom, probably, although energy prices are pretty volatile, as I'm sure you know. But one thing you know, especially in the UK, is that we need much more gas come September time than we do for spring and summer. So prices will drop, and then what will they do? August, September, October, they'll start to come back a bit. Interestingly, as time goes on and we still rely so much on gas to produce electricity, the seasonality effect will become worse and worse, because with the renewables, certainly on the solar side, you generate so much between March and September, and then so very little sort of as soon as the nights really start drawing in. Wind is different, of course, because we will have done plenty on wind in recent months over winter. So perhaps that balances it out. I'm actually not sure. I have to go away and check that out. But we are where we are in terms of energy prices having come basically all the way back down, and that barrel of oil is now back to about where a barrel of oil is today, actually, the equivalent of about 85 a barrel. So still a bit expensive compared to recent years, but much better than it was. So basically, where are we? We're at a place where inflation's probably going to dip below 3% in the next couple of months, and we'll get a print at 2 point something, at which point I think that the rest of the world will announce that inflation is conquered in the UK and all's jolly good. And then the two things that are really going to keep it moving are the reversal of the energy prices, when that starts to happen, when they have genuinely bottomed. It'll be the July price cap drop that will be bigger than the April, that will be significant, just like the April price cap drop will be. And this presumes no big changes on the geopolitical side, obviously, in the interim. The April price cap drop has already been set at 15% off. So that's the household energy bills for people who are on variable are come down 15%, which is massive. But when that drops out, you're still left in a world where core CPI is 4.5, core CPIH, including housing costs, is 4.8. So CPIH is above CPI because housing costs, they started to move later, right? And it tends to be a lagging thing on rents. There's an amazing stat actually I saw from Chris Watkin this week that since 2016, rents are down 4.8% after inflation adjustment. And I think most people will find that utterly unbelievable. He ran a poll on LinkedIn. I saw the trap an absolute million miles off. 58% of people, I think, had voted, up 25% after inflation. And it just shows you people just don't really understand the concept of inflation, which is very typical and certainly more typical when it hasn't happened for 30 odd years. But if you've got services inflation at 6.1 and you've got wages still going up at 6.1 at the moment, right? What's the event that's going to drop those numbers significantly over the course of just a few months? I don't know. They're pretty sticky, right? Wages are pretty sticky, wage increases. And I think if you tried to make this sort of man on the street chat, most would feel that they're a bit behind on their wages since the cost of living has rocketed up so much. They're not really going to buy the argument that energy prices are coming down and blah, blah, blah. They want their wage rises now. Labour market's still pretty tight and companies are in a position where they're going to give them. Also, if anybody benchmarks it towards the minimum wage, as you know, as I've been banging on about, up 9.8% next month, which puts you a cost as an employer for a minimum wage member of staff who you're paying employers' national insurance for, which of course will be most of them because the tax thresholds have been frozen for so long and there's been so much inflation, will be 11.55% increase in staffing. I mean, that is huge, right? So greater than 6%. So let's go forward 6 months, let's say. Where do you see services inflation? 5% is a pretty good guess, I think, in terms of how it tends to decay, or thereabouts, plus or minus 0.5%, give me a chance, Where do you see wage inflation? Probably similarly, still 5%, plus or minus 0.5%. So services inflation is 47% of CPI. So that puts 2.5% in CPI before we get to the other 53% of the components. And if the energy prices have come back down as far as they're going to, and they're going to start going back up because it's winter time and gas gets more expensive in winter time, then where does that leave us? It ultimately leaves us in a position where, we're definitely going to see CPI still at 3% plus. And then if you just look across the pond to our friends in the United States, they hit 3% in June 2023, and they haven't been under 3% since then. That was their lowest print. That was 8 months ago. The two economies aren't the same, but they didn't have the energy spike and then the resultant drop further back. So that's why they didn't go as high as we did. And also why we might go below where they are. But once that's washed through the system, because that is the energy price spike is the transitory piece, right? Yeah. Once that has washed through in 3, 4, 5 months, however long it's going to take for the data to percolate through, we basically face a lot of the same constraints as the USA following the pandemic. Vastly increased debt, still a tight labour market, and then of course you've got to throw the election into the mixer. So what's going to, I think we're going to see. I thought 2 members of the committee would probably still vote upwards this week, and they didn't. They voted to hold. So I've been saying for a long time, we need this meeting where everybody holds before we can see a cut. I think you'll see people foaming at the mouth for a cut in May, which is the next meeting, which I don't see happening because there's at least 3 pretty hawky people on the committee who aren't going to stand for that. But my conspiracy theorist in me says when Jeremy Hunt's current consultant, Claire Lombardelli, joins the committee in July, she'll be voting down for political reasons. So it may well be we have 3 cuts this year. And if we do, I think in the ideal world, the bank would love them to be July. It's June's meeting. Sorry, there isn't a meeting in July. It would be June. And then there would be a pause at August meeting and another cut in September, and a pause at November's meeting and a cut in December. Will they be able to make all 3 of those? I don't know. I still see base ending this year at 4.75, to be honest. But 20 bips off the gilt yields is good because that's 20 bips off the mortgage cost of the money. It was a lovely order. I called this week's one downhill all the way because it was a lovely little ski slope just trending down all week. Inflation below consensus. Bank of England show no more signs of raising. And I thought, actually, they were pretty gutless, the Bank of England, in their report, or they've been politically influenced, because Chairman of the Federal Reserve, much as he takes a lot of flack, Jay Powell, but when does the Chairman of the Fed not take flack? Nobody likes the Fed. He came out and said, look, we're going to raise rates, we're going to hold rates, or we're going to cut rates, depending on what the data says. That's what we're going to do. So pretty hawkish, really, as far as statements go. But the raise needs to be on the table in the US because they're still running hot at 5.5% with this huge amount of debt that they've got. Whereas we said, Bailey basically came out and said, look, cuts are on the table now. And that's what sent those gilt yields downwards. Whereas I've still maintained that there's a non-zero probability that rates still need to go up a bit more. If we have another event that bumps inflation back up again, which might be energy price led or might be another way led, right? Rates would have to go up. So pretending that's not going to happen is lulling everybody into a false sense of security, which is not ideal. But economically, as I say, things look pretty good. Consumer-wise, things look better than they have done for a while. So it has to go down as a good week. The other thing I did was a bit of, which maybe could kick off our broader discussion, a bit of political speculation on the basis that you'll be aware that politicians don't really work that hard when it comes to the amount of time they're in Parliament. We've got really 4 things of interest in differing stages on the burner for the property sector. Renters Reform Bill being the chief one, which I had to comment because I couldn't believe how much negativity Ben Beadle was getting on his social media for supporting the bill. Because I genuinely cannot understand why anybody thinks with a Labour government, a 75+% probability within the next 12 months, why would you think that it would be better for Labour majority to guide this bill through Parliament than a Conservative majority? You've got to be nuts. You've got to be absolutely nuts. And look, I like to see a balanced side of both sides of a debate, but I cannot see how anybody can't see Ben's doing the right thing here. But there we go. So that's our RRB, yeah. And then we've got potential PD changes that have been mentioned in terms of houses and flats and all the rest of it. We've got leasehold reform, which it looks like just this morning I've seen an article about that being pretty much watered down because the 40 billion that it would cost the pension funds would have to be compensated from somewhere. And surprisingly, we don't have 40 billion spare at the moment. So pretty much, I think what we've said all along, what we said when Guy was on some time back as well, it's not really a surprise to anybody, I don't think, in terms of that side of things. And then which is one that I've left out there then? Oh yeah, furnished holiday lets and the abolition of the tax changes. And as always, the beautifully named, the irony of looking at a report from the Office for Tax Simplification, which includes holiday lets and property taxes in general, that numbers over 110 pages. So to make something simple, I need to read over 110-page report. I mean, only in the UK could you have that level of irony, you know.
The full report was 11 pages, so they cut one out.
it does show you that there might, you know, and this is always the way with a complex tax system, which is obviously theoretically why we need an Office for Tax Simplification. But with a complex tax system, the changes that there might be in terms of other bits of tax, as when and if we change the holiday let regime so it comes more into line with the rest of residential property, are significant, because things like business property relief get put on the table. Because if you're holding the property because of the short stay accommodation business that you're running, then you could claim BPR, which is a big tax break that's used quite a lot in storage companies or any company that needs, you know, in terms of inheritance tax planning and stuff like that. BPR is a big deal. So as usual, one thing changes over here and then 10 things change in the background that all might have unintended consequences that the bill doesn't really want to bring about. But there we go. So I don't know. I've plumped for I think one out of those might go through while we've got these sessions left in Parliament. The only sort of meaningful, sizable session we have left is between the beginning of June and the middle of July, mid to late July. And then, of course, we don't know whether Parliament will sit again this Parliament because we don't know when the election will be called. We've got a week here and a couple of weeks there, but, they have a bit off for Whitsun because, they're such observant religious individuals. Easter obviously is upon us pretty much. And there's really not that much time left in Parliament. So the cynic in me suggests that the Conservatives are going to be pushing things that have got significant political capital, and a watered down renters reform bill because the backbenchers have said, listen, we're all landlords, or we know landlords, or our voters are landlords, somehow still true, but maybe because the landlords can't go anywhere else, possibly. We're not standing for a really strong renters reform bill. So where's the political capital in getting a watered down one through? Now, there's more political capital in raising more tax for local authorities or for the central government by changing the furnished holiday let regime, isn't there, realistically? So I'm sure Gove will be pushing on all of these things, but with leasehold reform also taking a bit of a step here, the reform isn't going to be particularly significant apart from no new ground rents, which, as I understand it, has already been done anyway. So what will we get through before they tell us the date? I don't know. A lot of people are now saying the date is going to be mid-November. There's a bit of speculation of it being just after the conference. There's a few heavy hints being dropped now. Sunak's saying when it isn't, rather than when it is at the moment. And of course, there's still a fair bit of speculation that they'll try and get rid of Dishy Rishi, although surely to goodness it would make them the biggest laughing stock of all time. And they've already had a good go in this Parliament of being the biggest laughing stock of all time. They've already elected a lettuce, essentially. I'm sure, this would be even worse. And I'm not sure who would be waiting in the wings, but there's a few. You're talking Badenoch, Braverman, Truss coming back. I mean, something truly, truly, truly giggly if that does happen,
Yeah.
So that's where we are. But I thought we could have a chat around whether you think any of those political bits will go through before. I worked out. I think there's about 10 weeks left of Parliament basically sitting for them to vote on. So it's really, really not a lot, even though it's March.
Last week, I risked my mental health by listening to LBC. You just never know if it's going to be like this nihilistic downturn of everyone's a bastard or whatever it is. Anyway, so listening to it, and it was an interview that I think maybe is it O'Brien? Anyway, he was having, and it was when they came out and said that they were going to give the MPs a pay rise. So this MP gets on there and says, oh, well, if you think about it, you have to read all of these reports. You have to be here in your constituency, here in Westminster. It's a fully involved thing. You're working about 14, 15 hours a day and sometimes over weekends. And yes, you get Easter off, but you're probably still responding to messages and doing stuff like this. And he said, oh, that's like a full-time thing. And then he said, well, why do so many MPs have other jobs? Where do they find the time? They have the MPs, they have family. Where do they have time to get the jobs? And it was like a sputtering, like some of them are doctors, and yeah, but how do you do both? If you're doing 15 hours of MP work a day, you're not going to do heart surgery on that same day. And if you were the person having heart surgery, you'd go, I don't want that one. That's not slept for a month. I don't want them digging around in my aortic pump, The arguments they made, like she walked straight into it. And he was like, well, why do you have second jobs? Like, how do you, I think you should have an increased wage if you are working all these hours and you're having such a positive impact on society, which not a single one has been able to do for the last 300 years. That's beside the point. But if you did have a positive impact and you were working all those hours, you shouldn't be able to have a second job. You shouldn't be able to be an editor of a newspaper. You shouldn't be able to be a board director of a pharmaceutical company. You shouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z. Even if you're a dentist that's an MP, you're no longer a dentist. Not if you're doing 90 hours a week. You can't be rattling around in somebody's gob. That's not a good look.
I think the reality is, a lot of the correspondence bits are done by the team that obviously we also pay for, who are usually overworked and underpaid and under high levels of stress and probably quite deluded in the cause that they're supporting. But you also see the odd. I mean, Nadine Dorries didn't do a great amount for the cause of MPs in terms of by basically never having a surgery, never doing anything locally, just basically using it to get some Insta followers or whatever she did. I mean,
the unwritten to do that.
The unwritten constitution is abusable, as we've seen more times over the past 5 years than we've seen probably on the 50 years before that. Is it fair to say? I mean, it's problematic, and there are obviously people who get away with murder. Dorries again. I think O'Brien on LBC had a Dorries watch. I think it was. So every day he would check whether she'd resigned yet, because she said she was going to resign, and she just cracked on for another 100 and something days before resigning. Obviously, taking the money for being an MP. We're doing no work at all. So recalls are more. I know we can have recalls these days, and we've had a few recalls, but they probably need to be able to be forced a bit more by votes in the House or something like that, I think.
Sounds like that it's the team and the support network, as you say, that needs the bleeding pay rise rather than the
Absolutely.
What's that? How much is the proposed increase to the wage?
I'm not sure actually, because it is set by a committee, isn't it? An independent committee. But how? I think they're going to something like 90. It's starting with a 9 now, isn't it? They're going to 90.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they had a pretty derisory rise last year. I think they had about 2.5%, and that was obviously to sort of keep in line with what they were proposing for other public sector workers, and they accepted it. But that is just calculating it. That's about a 5.5% pay rise. So not really out of line with anything ridiculous. But when you hear 91 grand and you think, how well have they done? There's no performance related stuff in there, is there? And as you say, you're in Parliament, a third of the time, maybe something like that. And that's when it's sitting. You don't necessarily have to be there all of that. So you're going to be there a sixth of the time or something like that. It's a part-time job, or it's being treated like a part-time job.
There's a
Twitter page. Payment for the wages for MPs is a bit like, you could compare it to playing for like England or whatever national team in football or something. It's like you're probably making good money in the club and somewhere else if you're a football player. And I guess playing for the national team is more of a badge of honor. And I don't think MPC is like that. They just and I think that it would be much better if being an MP was seen a bit like that, and kind of people who go for MPs, they already have well settled things in the background.
It's a tough one, really, because that's sort of what the House of Lords is, right? Realistically, and there's all sorts of arguments around. Cameron was going to reform the House of Lords. Lots of people have met Cameron was going to do a lot of things. I mean, let's face it. But then, less said the better. Although now he looks pretty good compared to some of the dross we've had since Cameron. But there we go. So that's where you get your Martin Lewis. Martin Lewis will be in the House of Lords one day going to bat for stuff. There's lots of, celeb / useful. Then you get your Michelle Moans, of course, as well, which not every appointment is perfect. And then you get the ones where they've just been put in by Liz Truss or Boris or whatever, and it makes a mockery of the whole system. So again, they've probably done the House of Lords more damage in the last 5 years than they've done for a long time. But but the trouble is, I guess, more than the England football team, you're at the top of your game at the time, whereas in the Lords, you've probably done some pretty incredible stuff and you're the right sort of personality to be in there, but you're probably not the peak of your powers anymore. So
There used to be a Twitter page. So someone was obviously watching like PM question times, or when the Commons was sitting or the House was sitting, and he would be taking screenshots from his laptop of the MPs that had fallen asleep on the backbenches, and you think, yeah, that's a £90,000 a year job. Just turn up, sit on those comfy leather sofas, and doesn't matter that we're talking about affairs of state and international security and whatever. I'll have a nap.
I'm thinking of one specific picture of Rees-Mogg that I've got in my brain. Have you seen that one where he's reclined right out, and he looks about 8 foot tall, but he's sleepy. He's very well away. Very well away.
Cringe.
But yes, Guy points out that the rules are different if you're in the cabinet than if you're just an MP or a backbencher. Absolutely correct. The other thing to consider is if you were a titan of industry or the head of a big company, you don't have the ability in the same way that MPs do to claim all of these different types of expenses. I mean, you could claim them. That doesn't mean the HMRC are going to accept them. It'd be difficult to claim a shag pad in London if you're an MP for Hull. Do you know what I mean? But they do that, and that's another thing that the Weights and Measures Office and a couple of other independent forums have been discussing for a long time. So you think £90,000 probably isn't that much of a wage, but when you consider that their entire existence is subsidized by the people, there are some really big differences to take there. I think that needs to be factored in. What is the cost of traveling daily to and from an office? You lump that on top because they're not paying that. You have your entire constituency office subsidized. You probably have a food allowance subsidized. It's if you take the base wage as the barometer for what they're earning or what they're achieving, it's a very, very poor single metric that doesn't really address the full picture.
And you employ your spouse or your cousin or your somebody. So there
we had someone at the international. We had someone at the Inspirational Women's Awards who hired his spouse when he was an MEP.
That's right.
Yeah.
We did. Oh, good fun.
Interesting.
Got any questions, Piotr?
You've got a couple of comments. Guy is really active as usual. It says, and I'm a suspect there'll be around 16 parliamentary sessions before the election. They should be fighting the election. It's more media than MP chatter for a change. Brilliant. There's not many questions, just a few comments on the things that we were discussing.
If anybody's got any questions this morning, put in the comments and we'll read them out and try and answer them as best we can.
Yeah, and there's one great comment from Guy as well, saying, congratulations, Helen, on your award. We all like to be recognized, and it's mine to say thank you. And guys pointing out that we probably won't have the Sunday special tomorrow next week, and Easter Sunday. We'll let people have Easter Sunday without us.
Stuffing our faces with chocolate. Actually, I've been doing that all week in London. Oh my God, I have a serious addiction. In case Marks and Spencer will listen, I have a serious addiction to your chocolate peanuts. I'm open for all sponsorship deals, MP style.
Hope everybody's audio's in good order as well, because that could have gone badly wrong there, Helen, if you're not careful.
Oh God. Peanuts, nuts, peanut. Oh God, stop! I'm making it worse, aren't I?
It certainly could be inspirational. Look at it that way. So how many people were at the awards, Helen? I'd say there's quite a few hundred by the sounds of it, or 1,000 or something. Sounds massive.
Actually, no, it wasn't that big in terms of attending. Like, what would you say, Jay? 200 or so?
I think I counted 22 tables with
Okay,
about
so-
10 people a table. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
220.
220. But of those 22, we had 5 tables, so we were like
Mob-handed.
Yeah, part of it.
The largest contingent. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I should give us, as we are saying thank yous, I should give it a shout out to Guy Andrew, who found them, who put everything on. Like, it's those things are no small feat, as I know, because I'm trying to organise this conference myself in May. Those things are an absolute mission to put on and coordinate, and guests and speakers and presenters, and there was a whole host of celebrities and press. In fact, we got shuffled off were you there, Jay, when we got shuffled off the red carpet? They're like, this is for celebrities, the lady that was organising the photos. This is for celebrities, as like the whole property sisters stormed the red carpet for like photo. Like, it's for celebrities. Like, and
What are you trying to say? How dare you assume?
I did see actually there's Wendy Whitaker just shared a link to the Daily Mail article, which is of absolutely no substance. It's just all about what people were wearing, which is a little bit sad, given the amazing people that were there. It's fucking frustrating, let's just say it. But what I did love is that one of the images they've got of Dame Joan receiving her Lifetime Achievement Award is she's got hold of it, and literally next to her head on the banner at the background, all the sponsors is Property Sisters. I'm like, yes, Joan, yes, come and join us. I might make that my profile photo. Dame Joan. Love them. So, yes, let's hope the Daily Mail do a follow up with that and feature some of the really, really amazing women with amazing stories of resilience and God, the stuff that those women have overcome to be on that stage. I was part of the judging committee for some of those awards, and honestly, it was tear-jerking, like truly tear-jerking, the stuff that those women have overcome and the difference that they're making. So huge congratulations. And I think as I said and other people said as well, those awards, any awards, as we all know, it's not just about you, and it's not about what you've done. There's so many people in your life who you've had help from, mentorship from, support, guidance, whatever. We all need that, and it's about all those people that have also helped us to get to wherever we are. So I'm hugely grateful for everybody in that room, everybody who's supported me, all the messages of encouragement. So thank you from me, big thank you. There's a really, like Guy made the point, and it's a really good point. Makes you very grateful. I did sleep with the award on the first night. I'll tell you. Not my usual style, I might add. But
amazing. It's very customary for football players to take photos with the award in bed the next morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think you should do it for Instagram.
Do we need a big fluffy dressing gown? And
if it was football, it'd have to be a dry rope, Helen, surely these days. But dressing gown would do.
Amazing, cool. We've got a little announcement as well. Oh, actually, I don't know if Jay is gonna participate. Maybe. Who knows?
Jay's not sure what you're talking about.
This looks interesting.
Now we're really excited. Now you've really got us on the edge of our seat.
Amazing, cool. Well, I thought it would be super fun to put together a little paddle tournament for property people in June. I don't know how many paddle enthusiasts we've got watching or around here, but in June we'll do a little paddle tournament with guys, Property by Kazi, and a few other people. It will be a fun day. Paddle is one of the most quickly growing sports in the UK and probably, I don't know, in the world, I don't know, but it's really popular
in Malta. I'll have some lessons quick.
There was plenty playing it in Dubai when I went last. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, it's a super fun thing. So June we'll play, and I'll put a little link to a form that you can you can basically put your details on the waiting list, and when we have full details, we'll let you know.
Where will it be, Piotr? In the UK or Portugal?
Yeah, it'll be in London. Yes, there's actually I did research. There's several courts for paddle now in London, and some of them brand new, very quickly growing sport. So anyone into paddle, let us know and put your details on the waiting list.
Cool. We'll have some lessons in Malta. There's definitely a coach or two in Malta, which, given the size of Malta, is.
Yeah. So that's my little announcement. Jay, will you participate?
I will participate. Yeah, I enjoyed it the last time I played it.
Okay, good.
I can just see me and Jay on like drinks duty, though. Should we just?
When are you starting training, Jay?
You know what? I'll start training. Yeah, I'll go to a tennis court here and just start hitting a ball. Just get my slides going. You've got to really slide around the court, haven't you? You've got to keep moving. So I like it. It's good fun, and you just get to hit walls and people bounce off of stuff, and it's I like the aggressive element to it.
Wow, brilliant. So announcement's over.
Well, in time for the announcement being over, we have a question from Benjamin Chiriri.
Hi, Ben.
Chiriri.
Brilliant. So Benjamin's asking, what generally looks like a good mortgage deal right now, considering the car management fees involved and the economy's direction, a tracker or lock-in rate for 2 to 5 years?
Well, this is a super question. I was actually absolutely geeking out at, for those who haven't seen it, the Spectator have a phenomenal site for data for all sorts of stuff, healthcare, the economy, etc., etc. And there's some fab stuff on here in terms of graphs. And one of them that really caught my eye when I was looking at it, I was looking at it this morning actually, is what the UK mortgage stock looks like at the moment and who's doing what. So the most recent data is showing people taking out more than 5 year fixes. So fixes for more than 5 years, 3.5%. People taking out 5 year fixes, 57%. 3 or 4 year fixes, 5%. 2 year fixes, 22%. And then variable rate, 12%. Now, so that sort of tells you what everybody, doesn't mean that 57% is 5 year means that's what you're doing, but it is what we're doing at the moment as well, because of the inverted yield curve, apart from anything else. And I can understand why people would use a shorter term if they're thinking they might sell the property within that time frame, so that there is some logic in using shorter terms. But the variable really caught my eye because in 2016, 50% of people were taking out variable rate mortgages. Can you believe that? I'm really surprised that it was that high. And 2 years were more popular than 5 years at the time. The 5 years were hanging around, can't quite see the data in there, but looks like about 15 to 20% of them were 5 year fixes. So they've grown massively in popularity, and the variables have come right back down. Of course, the variable rate, 2016 variable rate for 4 or 5 years would have looked very, very good, of course, because the gilt rates were trending down at the time. But I would think it's going to depend on how long you're going to hold it for. But if it's a long-term hold, if it's not stacking up on 5 year, I'd be questioning whether it is really a long-term hold and whether you need to optimize it or whether you need to consider moving it on. But a lot of stuff we've done over the past 15, 20 months, I suppose, it hasn't really set the world on fire in year one when we're holding stuff. But because we're in an environment where rents are growing quite aggressively, we know that year 2 will look a bit better and year 3 starts to look interesting and year 4 looks pretty good and year 5 looks amazing. And then if we can fix at a lower rate after year 5, we actually should be really in clover with that property. So cash flow is hard to come by at the moment, Ben, ultimately. But yeah, we're doing lots of 5 year fixes at the moment.
So on the variable side, with the variable going up, do you think people are really I don't know. It sounds like there's a lot of hope value in there. Like I had this conversation with, actually, it's the two ladies you were talking to, Jay. Kind of like, what's happening? What do we think? I did tell them to tune in and watch this morning to listen to Adam. Are you there, Claire? Give us a wave if you are. But yeah, I pretty much saying a lot of what you've said, and they're just like, this is not what we want to hear, and this is not what we want to hear. I'm like, I know, I'm with you, babe, but do you think there's hope value in if they get the variable, then that rates will come down quicker?
I think that's absolutely definitely what's happening. And I think there's been lots of people saying for the last, since the rates really went really wonky, so since October 22, I think there's a lot of people been saying, I think I'm going to go for a variable, waiting for good stuff to happen. And I've kind of advised against it because I'm going to look, there's risks to the upside here. And if they did do that in October 22, it was actually June, July 23 when they really got hurt the most, because some of those rates were up even more at that point. But of course, it might well be that they come back down, but we're only 7 months away from October 2024, at which point you've got through a 2-year cycle, So variable's really hopeful, I think, to be honest. I mean, look, if you were thinking about selling it within the 2 years, you can understand why people would go variable. It's also fair to say some of the variables at one point or another didn't look too unattractive because they had relatively small margins on top. They were doing them at sort of 2% margins again, so you could understand it. But the reality of it base coming down particularly quickly, as I said, unless it's a real sharp drop because there's a crisis moment situation, stronger for longer is the way forward. And we're currently tossing up between 4.5 and 4.75 for the end of this year. So these are not variable rates you want to be paying with a 2% margin on top, And the markets say 2027, 3.5% base rate. That's what it says at the moment. So what are you really hoping for? 3.5% base plus a couple of percent margin is the best you're going to get. 2.5% margin, well, you're still paying 6%. So, it's very hopeful indeed. And I think most people have now kind of washed out of the idea that we're really going to see a return to your 3.14% mortgages and stuff like that we had for a few years. Doesn't mean that in 5 years' time we can't be seeing, bear in mind the 5-year. If you were variable on the gilt price rather than the base rate, that might be a different conversation. But you don't normally see swap rate plus margin as a variable. You might do in commercial loans. You quite often do in commercial loans, but you won't see it much available in resi.
Well, they used to have the interest rate swaps. So Lloyds and Barclays and a couple of others were actually handing out mortgages based on, it was pre-Sonia, so it was the LIBOR. So they were doing it based on the LIBOR rate. And one of the funds or partition funds I did some work for, they had the majority of their loans on a LIBOR rate as an interest rate swap. So in from 96 to 2007, they were crushing it. Their debt was nothing. 2009 kind of kicks in, or 2007 to 2009 gets rocky. Then all of a sudden, their interest rate payments go absolutely bonkers. And then obviously, because the LIBOR was very easily manipulated, they moved into the SONIA rate. So, and then a friend of mine set up a law firm almost exclusively for the people that were sold the interest rate swap mortgages without being told what the full effect of it was. So there was the banks set aside an entire slush fund for people to kind of claim back when it was missold, or they were just sold an account and they weren't told it was interest rate determined. So it was a very interesting time to be alive. But I think a lot of people were hopeful that the interest rate would come down quicker. And you're probably right, Adam. By the time that there is a cut or two and you hit October, they would have done just as well of locking in 2 years ago and holding their breath. But yeah,
And you don't want to be racking up valuation fees, legal fees, and all the rest of it every 2 years either, because it starts to get really expensive really quickly, you know.
Yeah, especially with the arrangement fees being sometimes 5-7%. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's it, to get yourself into the 4.xx. Those are the sort of arrangement fees you need to be paying still. Yeah.
Actually, and that's the really good bit about Benjamin's question. It's not about whether to fix for how long for a variable. It's actually, he's mindful and makes a really good point. Like, you have to consider the arrangement fees and amortize those over how long you think you're going to have that product for. So it's a little more, little more nuanced than do this or do that.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, we're getting to 10 o'clock. So I think it is safe to say we're not coming back next week. Yes? Not. Okay. We are going to
will be there
ourselves
when
with
it's
chocolate.
opening his talking and eating his chocolates.
I'm going to be
Unboxing, Easter egg unboxing live sounds good. Sounds good, actually, doesn't it? Sounds good.
Amazing. But we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. So fantastic to have everyone engaging with us. Have a great Easter, guys. And
can I just give one last shout out before we go, just for our International Women's Conference? And it's not just for women. If anybody men want to come, you are more than welcome to Malta on the 24th and 25th of May. It's 2 days. Actually, we've got loads of property sisters and women in construction coming over. Michaela is actually one of my speakers. I'm going to be doing a fireside chat with her. And I don't know if you've seen Michaela speak before, but she's bloody hilarious. Like, she knows her stuff. She knows her information and her stats and everything, but she's really, really funny. She's a great speaker. So I'm beyond excited about that. I'm hosting, I'm in charge of the first day. That's the Friday. That's women in the workplace. So we've got panels on entrepreneurs. We've got a whole host of C-suite executives, female executives from Malta and elsewhere, who are going to be talking about their experience, their wisdom. We've got a panel about knowing your worth, which will be looking at gender pay gap, but also what we can do, how we can really own like our words. So we've got an amazing psychologist talking about mindset stuff there. We've got a panel on working mothers, because obviously I have to tell you, actually, the table that I was sat at and the women in construction next to me, those women do equally, if not more, stuff than I do. And they have a kid or 2 or 3 or 5 to juggle as well. And I honestly just don't know. Honestly, I just think they must have bigger brains than me. That's the only thing I can think of, how they juggle everything. So we have a whole panel on that. We're, talking about advice. It's not, oh, how hard it is, how amazing are we? It's like, this is what we do. This is how we manage. These are the people we want to say thank you to. So we have really good speakers. We've got Property Sister speaking on there as well. So we'll stick the links in below. But if anybody wants more information, it's in Valletta, the capital. I can give you recommendations. We have a preferred hotel that you can get a discount at, an amazing hotel, by the way, where we filmed my podcast series, which is all done, which is why I'm so knackered and have enormous bags under my eyes. But that will be launched on the 9th of April. So I will talk about that on one of our future Sundays as well. Thank you for this public service announcement. Amazing.
Excellent.
Sounds like
one more massive round of applause for Helen as well, I think, in terms of we expect to see that award every week, Helen. You know that, right? Every week.
I need to set on my at home again, like with Jay and Piotr's book, and like my award, and just gonna have my head between the two. Yeah. Well, that's my first job when I get back to Malta. Actually, I'm flying back. I should have been in London all week. So the people that I've had to stand up, I am so sorry. But I've got a car picking me up at 4 a.m. because I'm on a 7 a.m. flight back to Malta tomorrow, because I'm actually going to a Women of Influence drinks with the American ambassador in Malta, we had a private meeting with her a couple of weeks ago, who is an amazing, she's not a political appointee. Okay. She's a lifetime And she's a kick-ass. Are you allowed to say that about an ambassador? She's an amazing businesswoman in her own right. So
call her kick and bass. You could call her. How about that? How about that? You like that?
So we had an amazing meeting with her. She's so supportive of what we're doing.
That's
because,
awesome.
Yeah, this thing in Malta is, I was part of a women's conference summit last year, and this is going bigger and better for our own one. I'm really, really, really passionate about. I believe like we really need this in Malta, and we need to make it an annual thing, and drag them into the
Amazing.
future. So yeah, I'll be back for that.
Wow. And that's
Cool.
how you get the Inspirational Woman Award.
Apparently so. Who knew? I didn't even know I was nominated. Honestly, I was like, whoa.
There were some people that didn't know they were nominated. They just got a phone call saying, you're getting an award. Get the glad rags on, get to London. And they're like,
that was Wendy on the day.
Wendy on the day, she's like, she goes, I've got no idea. I've got a couple of hours to get to London. She obviously bombed it down the M1 or wherever she's from.
Awesome. Yeah. I was so pleased to see that. Yeah.
Okay. Happy Sunday. Happy Easter, everyone. See you all 2 weeks' time.
See you then.